So the Battle Break Chapter 5 has been out for about a day now, and I've had my time to form my thoughts about the update, from the new units to Chapter 5 Normal, and to Chapter 5 Tumore. And I wanted to make a quick little review going over all the stuff I did and did not like about it. Oh, and this video will be split up into 3 sections, with the first being a spoiler-free section, going over my overall takeaway from this chapter, and then moving into in-depth discussion about Normal and Tumore mode, and getting into my bigger issues of this chapter. Let's just get into it, I suppose. Chapter 5 Not on Tumore mode is probably my favorite chapter in the Battle Bricks. Its enemy roster in addition to the stage design is probably my favorite out of any chapter, with each new enemy feeling like they contribute something important. The bosses, which I'll go more in depth on in spoiler sections, are honestly a mixed bag for me. With how good the normal stages are, I can let that slide. The backgrounds are visually appealing to look at, and are easily some of the best in the game. In addition to that, the songs made for this chapter are really good. Plus, the songs taken from other games are amazing picks, perfectly fitting the stages they are used on. The new Gotcha units are really fun to use, especially the 2 Ubers, but while potentially overtuned, still feel great to play with. Especially Blaze, which is probably my new favorite Uber. Battle changes are kind of a mixed bag for me, like Healer and Battler getting effectively double stats, making it genuinely a really good generalist support unit is nice and adds a lot more loadout variety. But some of these changes I don't particularly like, such as them kind of making Deathbringer pointless for no good reason, to them nerfing little Chronos into the ground for quite frankly an unjustified reason. Oh, and I don't really like the anti-AFK farm mechanic. The game's current progression doesn't really justify this. While yes, sub-chapters exist, I think letting the player choose if they so want to not play sub-chapters and just play through the normal chapters is fine and shouldn't really be punished. Like, I understand why you'd want to encourage people to play sub-chapters, but some people just aren't here for those, and I think if someone just doesn't want to play the sub-chapters, then that's for them. They can skip them if they want to, and if they desire. So I think letting them do that is a fair option, all things considered. Okay, that's all I had to say about the more general things of this chapter. Now I'm going to get into the spoiler territory, so if you wanted to play the chapter yourself, I'll do it now. You've been warned. I'm assuming if you're still around that you don't care about spoilers or have already played the chapter, so let's just get into this, which will be brief since a lot of my opinions on normal chapter 5 can be summarizes. Yeah, I really liked it. The gun mechanic on normal mode is really fun. Both bosses that use it are using it really well, and the fun kid fight I feel like is a really well-made introduction to the mechanic, and being expanded upon during the third sheet is really cool. Oscar and all the Sector 3 enemies for that matter are easily some of the game's best in terms of enemy design. It really made me think, oh my god, what the hell am I fighting? But in like a really good way? The third tree is definitely one of my favorite stages in the game. The way it plays, easily the highlight of a chapter, having 2 bosses are really neat. I love the environment with it too. It's probably my favorite background in the entire game. It's close with Chronos' second background, though. Again, this section is really brief since normal chapter 5 is just really good, and I don't have many complaints for it, so there really isn't too much discussion to be had here. But I'd heavily recommend playing it for yourself if you haven't and you're just watching this and, like, not really caring about the spoilers. But I'm going to move on to Tumore mode, which I'm not going to be nearly as positive on, even though I do have positive things to say. But, I mean, let's just get into it. Oh yeah, and like you've been warned if you don't want Tumore mode spoilers. Go play it for yourself if you haven't. Or don't, actually, because the final boss of Tumore mode is kind of bad, but we'll get there. Yeah, I'm gonna be blunt. The chapter's Tumore mode is kind of bad. The latter 2 bosses feel barely playtested. More on that later, and the general game balance in those fights being heavily shifted away from actual battle counts gameplay just doesn't feel that good. Like, I don't like them shafting the battle counts gameplay or the gimmicks present in both of those. While those gimmicks are good, I don't think they're good enough to justify it, which I'll talk about when we get to those bosses themselves. And before I rant about the bosses, like, full on, I want to talk about the positives of Tumore mode. The stages are still, in fact, really good looking and play really well. The enemy roster is still really fun here, and Depriver especially is a really cool enemy. Even though it probably shouldn't be used anymore on gun stages from here on out, since it just kind of screws over mobile players, since you can't really move and shoot at the same time, but that's only an issue with a certain stage, which we'll get to later. And then it's a fun enemy to fight, it really feeling like a full-on boss fight you're fighting through, and second to how strong you've become. The Mimic Frog guys are really cool and genuinely caught me off guard when I was playing through the chapter. The guy with the Void Star, which I don't know how to pronounce the name of, is a really cool concept that I hope to see get expanded upon in further chapters. Changing enemy traits is a really cool mechanic to fight against. Anyways, enough stalling, let's just get to the bosses. Sergeant, I think is fine enough. I don't really have any issues with him, but I don't particularly care about him either. There's just, like, nothing to talk about with this fight. game kit, I think, is really close to being good, but I think the minigame system just has too many flaws holding it back, in addition to how the life system works. Especially when there's a minigame that's based on trivia, which feels like it exists for no good reason other than to screw over players that play the lines. And due to the way these issues culminate, the fight just kind of feels bad overall. Like, everything here is super high quality, but stuff from, like, the pop-ups going off-screen, preventing you from closing them, how clunky the Flappy Bird minigame can feel at times. To, again, the trivia minigame even existing, it just all works together to bog down what on paper is a really cool fight down to one of the weaker ones the game has to offer. And then we have the third tree, Tumore. Which might unironically be my least favorite Tumore mode chapter boss. There's so many aspects of this fight just don't work. The first phase is so slow, it bogs the stage down to a crawl pacing-wise. Having an effectively 5-minute long cutscene where you don't really do anything interesting is really annoying, considering one of the biggest issues of this fight is horrible sight readability. You are not realistically first trying to fight blind due to how many things are present here, but the game just doesn't tell you. The volleyball-esque mechanic in Phase 2 is not telegraphed literally at all, so if you don't know it's coming, it's basically a forced loss for future attempts. If any TVs are active when the desperation phase starts, you just instantly die, which is also not really telegraphed well, like, at all. For some reason, when it's something that instantly kills you at the end of a 15-minute long boss fight, I feel like it should be telegraphed. Oh, and about that desperation phase, I think the button mash requirement on it is genuinely too high when you consider that there isn't an accessibility option for this in any way, shape, or form. No holding to make the gun fire. No, like, oh, okay, you can't button mash, but you can do, like, another thing to compensate. No, there is zero accessibility option. Which means if you aren't good enough at button mashing, the stage will just be a hard wall, regardless of your ability to do everything else. And that just isn't fun. Because you can't exactly practice to get better at button mashing. Because button mashing isn't something you can really just be better at, for lack of better terms. It's more something that you're either good at or you're not good at and you don't really have much control over, which makes it a really stupid thing to put as a, like, wall in this game for progression. I don't know why they did this. Primer is a cool enemy here on paper, giving you more things to micromanage, but in practice it only really serves to screw over multiple players because you can't probably shoot and deal for Primer at the same time, which really sucks. Also, it takes up way too much screen space when it should just be, like, either on the side or, like, small and, like, a little bit above your, like, units. I think would make a lot more sense. Overall, I think this fight has potential. Like, the visuals are really good, and some of the concepts here are amazing, but the execution is horribly lacking, so it just doesn't click with me. To the extent it makes me wonder if the stage was even, like, really play-tested on anything but PC, considering the issues it has with Depriver being here on mobile. Okay, also, I want to point out, I've made it to the desperation phase over 10 times and still haven't won due to how strict the button mashing is. This might genuinely be the angriest I've gotten in a video game ever. And this is coming from someone that plays games like Ito, did most of Blood Army with, like, 0 issues. I never really got mad. And other Kaizo-esque challenges. But I think the difference from, like, this to them is those super difficult challenges I could go, okay, this is my fault. I will get better, and attempt after attempt, I will eventually succeed. But that just isn't present here, since the vast majority of my deaths were either just something the game didn't communicate to me, the volleyballing thing, or the TV's articulating into the desperation phase if you don't hear them properly, or due to the mashing, which you have very little control over how good you are at button mashing. While, yes, it's something you could practice and get better at, most people, it's something you're either good at or you're not, and there really isn't much you can do about that. In fact, there's no accessibility option for that, makes it even worse. Like, imagine, if the Chapter 6 Tumore mode boss died, and suddenly you have to MC a rhythm game chart of the boss's theme. Or else you instantly die. Do you know how unfair that'd be to most people? The fight, while visually appealing, has major issues with sight readability and it being a slog to get through. With a desperation phase that's overly punishing and difficult for literally zero good reason, that just, like, ruins this fight for me. So, what would I do to fix it? I would lower the speed of everything from the boss on 1 star from 100%, which is just like what it moves at currently, down to about 80%, giving you more time to react and more time to figure out how things work. Because the fight is just a bit too fast-paced, even though it's kind of a slog. It's like, you think it couldn't be those two things at once, but it somehow ends up being both of them at once, which is, you know, not great. It being so hard to sight read is just not fun, so I think slowing it down to about 80% of the current speed would help a lot with that. And also adding better indicators for things. Also, I'd make Depriver just, like, have a different minigame on mobile, because it currently just kind of screws over mobile players for no good reason, which, like, why? So I changed the minigame on mobile by shrinking the sphere down a sizable amount and moving it to above your unit bar, and having you hold it to like wind it. And if you overwind it, then you're punished by Depriver activating, and if you underwind it, you're also punished. Which I think is a fair way to handle the minigame on mobile, since you can't exactly do it the same way it is on PC without issues with gun, you know, kind of conflicting with things. And with those two changes, that single-handedly fixes a lot of issues with fight. The pacing would still be kind of bad, but the pacing requires a more of like a full rework to fix, and I don't expect that, so I'm fine with the pacing being a bit bad, but things just need to be adjusted, really. Oh yeah, right, there also definitely needs to be an accessibility option for the gun that lets you auto-fire it by holding. I understand this would make things easier, and I can understand maybe not wanting that, but this is kind of like a needed accessibility option. I don't think it's a worthwhile trade to make it so some people just can't play this fight properly because they can't button mash fast enough, but it is to make it slightly more difficult because, oh, you have to do it, you have to button mash. Like, I think having an accessibility option for this is fine. If you really wanted to, you can make the projectiles go a little bit faster if you have it enabled. Because even if you're bad at button mashing, you should be able to, realistically speaking, track well. Because tracking is a skill-based thing, and I think it is used pretty well here. The tracking in this fight is pretty fun to have to pull off. But the button mashing kind of, like, bogs it down. And that's all I really have to say on this rant about stupid third tree tumore, which is probably my least favorite stage in the game. I just don't care for it at all. And with all that said, let's just get into the outro, I guess. So, there's my full thoughts on the Battle Breach Chapter 5. Overall, I'd say it's good, but it has significant issues that hold it back from being truly great. I still would heavily encourage you to play this chapter for yourself if you haven't. While the two more bosses are kind of let down, everything else about this update is pretty great. I especially appreciate them going back and updating earlier chapters to be more polished and a bit closer to the new one. Anyways, that's all I have to say. See ya.